Monsieur Traver, if you
Thank you very much. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for this banking academy. Um, First of all, I would like to present to you a little overview of the macroeconomic backdrop in the two regions that are covered by this banking academy, the West and Central Africa, respectively. In this slide of the presentation, we illustrate real GDP growth expected, realized in 2020 and also expected in 2021 and 2022 and the years forward. What we can see is that both regions are expected to witness a V-shaped recovery, where the angle of the V, the lowest part of the slowdown, materialized in 2020. And in fact, for Central Africa, for example, it was the worst recession of minus 1.7% real GDP growth in 2020. Attributed to the COVID-19 pandemic and the restriction measures that were taken by the competent government to address the pandemic and also the disruptions in economic production. In West Africa, real GDP growth declined as well, but not to that extent. It was minus 0.7% in 2020. Going forward, recovery is anticipated to set foot in 2021 and 2022, with real GDP growth at 3.5 for West Africa. And about 3 to 3.4% for Central Africa. So essentially, the region is expected to resume its growth track following the pandemic. However, there are significant risks, and these risks relate first and foremost to the rate of the vaccination. And we see in the same slide on the right-hand side, where we illustrate the percentage of the population that has received at least one dose of a COVID-19 vaccine, and also the percentage of the population that is fully vaccinated. And you see where countries in sub-Saharan Africa compare, where we illustrate the average relative to the advanced economies. And we see that less than 3% of the population has received at least one vaccine in both West and Central Africa, when this is not the case for advanced economies, where more than 45% of the population has received at least one vaccine. In that regard, the countries rely a lot on the COVAX program for the provision of COVID-19 vaccines, to which the IB contributes and supports. But there are still the region, especially in West Africa, is not expected to acquire full immunization because of the vaccination before 2023. If we assume that the vaccination rate progresses up until that point at the level that currently progresses. So that is one risk. A second risk, which is very important to note as well, which has also positive but also some negative connotation, is the significant pickup in oil prices that we currently observe. Today, the Brent oil price trades at values in excess of $80 per barrel, more specifically 81, and we haven't seen that kind of prices for commodity prices since 2018. So there is a significant pickup in oil prices, which obviously is a good omen and a very supportive factor for growth of oil exporters in Central Africa. But for the rest of the commodity importers in the two regions, this could result in higher inflationary pressures that the central banks in the region will have to address going forward. Progressing with the presentation. Sorry, I think I cannot change my slides now. Here we are. Yes, I do. Progressive on the presentation, we see that over the years, West Africa experienced a significant build-up in debt, and we see that the gross external debt increased from about 10% in 2011 to almost 20% of GDP at end 2019. Where we see as well that there is a significant change in the mix of the creditors to the region. Specifically, what we see is that a larger part of the external debt is now market debt. That means that it is held by bondholders. And if you observe the yellow bar, how it increases over the years, essentially signaling that the region is liable to changes in global risk repricing and moves in international capital markets, and the region is becoming exposed to market volatility. What we also see in the same chart is that there is a significant amount of debt that is coming due over the years to come in West Africa. But the good thing is that the largest part of this debt is available in local currency. The largest part that is coming due over the next 3 years is local currency debt. Is not hard currency. Debt. Of the various countries in West Africa, 5 countries already have an IMF program, a straight IMF program, like an extended credit facility. Of the 16 countries in the region, 8 countries are classified by the IMF as having a high risk of debt distress, and only 7% of them are classified as countries having a moderate risk of debt distress. Most of the countries have benefited from the catastrophe and containment from disbursements from the IMF's Catastrophe and Containment Trust, because of the COVID pandemic, or the Rapid Credit Facility, and the largest part of the countries, the largest number of the countries, namely 13 countries, are currently under the umbrella of the Debt Suspension Service Suspension Initiative, which is organized by the IMF and the World Bank, and relates to a temporary debt suspension of official debt coming due up until end 21, signaling that first there is a significant buildup of the of debt over the years. Second, something needs to be done in terms of bringing back debt into a more sustainable path. Going to Central Africa. Going to Central Africa, we see a similar picture. We see that the gross external debt increased as well to levels approaching 25% of GDP. And here, what we see is that about 4/5 of the debt is owed by multi and bilateral lenders. And what is interesting here to note is the evolution of the gray bar, how it started in 2011 and how it ended in 2019, suggesting that a larger part of the of debt is now owned by bilateral lenders. And we see at the same time something that we observe in West Africa as well, that the debt that is coming due over the next 3 years is mostly local currencies, not hard currency. And the common denominator in both regions is that every time the principal issuers of hard currency bonds in the region issued hard currency bond, they opted for very long maturities. For maturities beyond 10 years, and that is the reason why we don't see debt coming due over the next 2 to 3 years. That is debt at longer maturities. When it comes to Central Africa, we have to say that 4 out of 8 Central African countries are having an extended credit facility with the IMF. And also Chad and Cameroon have reached staff-level agreement with the fund concerning an extended credit facility, an extended fund facility as well. Most of the countries in the region have benefited as well from IMF's rapid financing instrument and rapid credit facilities and the catastrophe containment trust, in order to do what? In order to address the immediate fiscal funding needs that came with the pandemic. When it comes to the classification, to the debt distress classification of the countries in the region, we can say that 3 countries in the region are at high risk of debt distress. 2 countries in the region are already in debt distress, and only 1 country is having a debt that is classified as being at a moderate debt distress. There is a significant variation in debt to GDP when it comes to the region. We have countries like, for example, the Central African Republic, where public debt is at 12% of GDP, while for other countries like Sao Tome and Principe, it can go all the way to 70% of GDP. Sorry, it doesn't change. Yes. The region both regions enter the crisis, the pandemic crisis, with some significant weaknesses when it comes to the access to finance. First and foremost, we see that about 1 in 2 companies in both West and Central Africa, to a lesser extent in Central Africa, signal out access to finance as a major obstacle to their operation. Yes, it is true that over the years, both regions recorded a significant progress when it comes to addressing access to finance, and these responses are currently a lot more favorable relative to what was the case, for example, 10 years back. But these numbers signal that there is still a significant room for improvement when it comes to access to finance. And we see as well that the value of collateral needed is significant as a percentage of the loan amount that is required, especially in West Africa, signaling out that there is a lack of high quality collateral, but also the high risk perceptions that SMEs are having concerning how very risky banks consider SMEs being, and that is the reason why they're asking such a high for SMEs to get a loan from banks. We also see that there is a significant poverty. And we see and we illustrate that in the slide at the right hand side, where we see that for some cases, like for example in Central Africa, but also in the full in WAEMU, we see that the poverty is very much endemic, and it is very high, and we are talking about 40% of the population living with a less than $1.90 in purchasing power terms per day, which suggests that there is high poverty. There is as well the problems with regards to access to finance that most likely have aggravated because of the pandemic, because of the confinement, because of the disruptions in the production process. And it is very fair to say that it is most likely that that a large part of the progress that has been achieved over the years in addressing poverty currently is under question. So at this occasion, and discussing about access to finance, we thought that it could bring value to the Banking Academy to present you some preliminary, some results, not preliminary results, some results from our annual publication, Finance in Africa, that we are that is forthcoming for publication. The Finance in Africa report has the unique feature of presenting the results of a survey that we conducted jointly with the Make Finance Work for Africa at the beginning of 2021. And we had a significant responsive rate from banks, given the fact that 80 banks participated all over sub-Saharan Africa. So the Finance in Africa, which illustrates and analyzes the results of that survey, and the survey as such is a very rich information. And in fact, it's the only up-to-date source of information that currently exists with results to the status of SMEs in terms of their access to finance, but also with regards to banks and the bank's perception concerning SME financing going forward. And what we what we can say is that what we witnessed from the survey is that 40% of banks surveyed in the study reported that it is more likely that it is SMEs that are going to be more negatively affected by the pandemic relative to other larger corporates. When it comes to the microfinance sector, which is considered to be the backbone of the economic activity in both in West and Central Africa, we see that the microfinance sector was resilient enough when it entered the crisis. Nevertheless, we witnessed that there is a significant deterioration in the quality of the loan book, despite the fact that the capital adequacy was there for most of the microfinance systems in sub-Saharan Africa. Microfinance institutions were proactive enough in addressing the crisis and benefited from the microfinance support provided by the regulators. And microfinance institutions at the same time resorted to digital sources, but still there is a deterioration expected in the loan quality going forward, especially for tier 2 and tier 3 microfinance enterprises. Also, what is very important to note, and what we learned from this survey, is that the private equity realized a significant decline in the fundraising in 2020 because of the pandemic. For example, the total fund raised was $2.3 billion in 2020, which was 34% down relative to what was experienced in the previous year. We know very well, according to the Finance in Africa report, that private equity has some specific. There are some specific characteristics about the private equity in sub-Saharan Africa. Namely, there are low returns. There are high valuations concerning equity, and third, the financial landscape is not as developed as elsewhere in emerging economies. Nevertheless, there was a significant pickup up until in the fundraising up until the pandemic crisis, which has now reversed. Also, in order for companies to cope with the pandemic, they relied, according to the Finance in Africa survey, they relied about 80% of banks relied on moratoriums, 70% relied on tightening their credit standards, and 1 in 2 more or less used guarantees from the government or other international financial institutions. Going forward, banks anticipate that there is going to be a recovery in demand for credit from SMEs, and that is expected to be particularly strong for local currency. When we ask the various banks to what extent climate is a strategic issue for them, they reply to us that 54 of the surveyed banks. For 54 of the surveyed banks, this is the case, while 40% already had staff working on green finance opportunities. Also, in terms of the digital finance, non-bank institutions have already pioneered digital finance. We have already discussed about microfinance and how it resorted to digital channels. But now banks are more engaged, and they want to do more, and they would like to fast forward their digital transformation, and to a certain extent that was triggered because from the pandemic, and this is a trend that is expected to stay with us going forward. Can you please go to the next slide? Once we dig more onto the specific results for the regions covered in this banking academy, we see that there is a significant demand for local currency credit. As the banks residing in West Africa and operating in West Africa are telling us in the Finance in Africa survey, the banks anticipate to accelerate their operational plans going forward, and especially the funding plans in local currency. And what is very important here to note is that to a certain extent, there is a kind of a match. There is a kind of a match between what SMEs are asking in terms of local currency and what banks are expected to deliver, or they are telling to deliver in local currency in local currency lending going forward, which is a very good omen in the sense that there are not in the sense that the misalignment between credit demand and supply, especially in local currency, is not expected to be that significant. Once we go to the next slide for Central Africa. In Central Africa, we see a similar picture, namely we see that banks in Central Africa yet again anticipate to expand their operations in the regions. Yet again, the funding is expected to be mainly in local currency. And what is very important is that credit demand is expected to increase, particularly in local currency, as we illustrate on the right-hand side of the chart, relative to foreign currency. So, all in all, to put everything into perspective, there is a significant demand in local currency lending. This is what banks are telling us. And this is what banks are telling us from their interaction with their clients. And this is what we see in this survey. And once we compare the demand that we had for local currency lending from this issue of the Finance in Africa report relative to what was the case in previous issues of the Finance in Africa report, we can tell the difference as well. So it's not that there is an increase in the demand going forward, but it is relative to previous years as well, that there is more demand for local currency lending. So, and if we go to the next slide, just to thank you for your attention. Just to thank you for your attention, and wish you to take the very best out of this banking academy. Thank you.
Merci à vous, Emmanuel.
Many thanks, Emmanuel Davradakis, for this update about the trends in the banking sector in Western Africa and Central Africa. Many points were highlighted in your presentation for this finance report, which will soon be published by the European Investment Bank. So some points which I've noted, for example, the increase in external debt for many countries in the sub-region, in the Western Africa region and Central Africa, weak access to finance and microfinance, and the poverty that is exacerbated by the pandemic and the health crisis that has particularly hit the small and medium enterprises pretty badly, as they are the most impacted by this pandemic. So up until now, there was a tendency to increase the funding in the raising of funds in the banking sector, but this health crisis is impacting that, and the banking sector is showing that there is an increase in demand, and that this should recover significantly in the next few years, and especially there is a need for digitalization that was badly felt in this health crisis. And this is, of course, not a kind of comprehensive overview of what you have developed in your presentation, but just some main points that attracted my attention during this very interesting presentation. So now, in order to go further with our program for this first day of the European Investment Bank Virtual Academy and this opening session, as I was saying earlier on, we will have at the end of the day an announcement regarding some free training course that will be granted by the European Investment Bank, and we'll give you further information at the end of the day during the closing ceremony, as well as a video that will give you all the relevant information so that you can understand clearly what this is about. So first of all, I will ask you to answer a few poll questions for the first part of our poll for the day. In this first part of our poll, we will ask you some questions regarding the impact that COVID-19 has on micro, small, and medium enterprises in the Western and Central Africa region. We want to have your opinion, and we will have some specific questions that we invite you to answer, and then we'll be back with you in a few moments after you will have sight of these questions. Many thanks.